Those books will take long before they are prepared, and then they will normally reach us a year later, when that learner is already in the next class.
And sometimes they can see that like we are disturbing them, because if I have to read this subject, I must call my friend to come and read for me, and maybe she was reading another subject.
Digital learning is the most effective way to deliver education for learners and trainees with disabilities in school.
You build and you build to the top. Build and build as you watch.
One day, Italy decided to go to the beach.
Close to 450,000 visually impaired children are in school but are not accessing textbooks because they are not produced in accessible formats. Ordinarily, Kenyan textbook publishers do not publish their works in Braille or large print formats. Statistics indicate that 99% of all published works are not accessible to blind and partially sighted people.
Since I entered this school, I've only encountered only 3 subjects. That is biology, theory, and history. Those are the subjects which I have in Braille.
The process of producing Braille and large print formats is expensive for the underfunded schools of the blind.
This enables learners with low vision to access, who cannot be able to read print directly, to be able to read books, to be able to take the exams. It is expensive. Not very many education institutions that will be able to own such a machine.
Most of these schools lack embossing machines that can produce the textbooks in Braille format, while those that have embossers only produce a few books because of the high cost of Braille paper.
Buying this copy good for, you get it at say 500, 600 shillings. Now, if you're going to buy a volume of this is one volume, which is like a fraction of that of this. It is going between 1,000 to 1,500 shillings a copy. So, if you're to buy this book in Braille, and then remember you have 3 volumes from this copy, so you have 1,500 times 3. That's the cost of this one copy.
In 2003, when the government declared free primary education, there was hope that the problem of accessible textbooks for the blind would be a thing of the past, since the government committed itself to producing textbooks for all children. But that hope easily dissipated as the government delayed in delivering textbooks in Braille by 1 year.
Most of the books we get are provided by the Ministry of Education through Kenya Institute of the Blind. Now, being one organization, those books will take long before they are prepared, and then they will normally reach us a year later, when that learner is already in the next class. And that has been the trend for the past 20 years I have been here.
The competency-based curriculum has faced the same challenge, and not all schools have benefited from the few Braille books delivered to schools for the blind and partially sighted.
The first book that the government brought this year was for grade 4, and all the books are in print. And the class are of the children using Braille. So we don't have these books for teaching these children, and the teachers have to struggle to transcribe the work for these children every day. So I think the government should assist us, bring the books in Braille, not in print, so that the children who are visually impaired should also benefit just like the other children.
To go through the school system, students as well as blind teachers depend on assistance to read the printed textbooks. However, this assistance comes with its own unique challenges, such as the reader getting tired or mispronouncing of words.
Sometimes a reader may not be clear in pronunciation of word, and you may end up writing the wrong spelling or giving the wrong information. And also sometimes accents differ from one person to another, so that you as a teacher with visual impairment, we may end up having a lot of challenges.
So you have to need to dwell on these print people to read for you. So, and sometimes they can see that like we are disturbing them.
Although the lack of accessible textbooks for the blind and partially sighted persists, there is a glimmer of hope following the coming to force of the Marrakesh Treaty. Enacted in June 2013 and enforced in Kenya from September 2016, Marrakesh Treaty is an international law that facilitates access to published works for persons who are blind, visually impaired, or print disabled. Lobbying by the blind people organizations in Kenya resulted in the country becoming a state party to the treaty in June 2017 after depositing instruments of ratification.
This treaty with no controls on copyright for us to put our material in braille, then we will be able to get more books, both in braille or on audio.
The Book Famine is a national campaign by Kenya Union of the Blind to ensure that majority of learners in schools have access to books. Close to 500 school-age going children are in school, but they cannot access books simply because these books are not accessible in formats that can be accessed by visually impaired learners.
Then you select the Braille classroom. Intro. Now on dot, we are going to learn how the Braille dots are formed in the cell, okay?
Yes.
How many cells are there in that dot, in the Braille cells? How many dots? 6.
This makes it easier to increase the supply of accessible books by facilitating those who produce them. Secondly, the treaty allows the authorized entities to supply accessible copies of books across borders. This offers an opportunity to end the book famine for blind people in poor countries like Kenya. Kenya Union of the Blind, KUB, has been at the forefront of the campaigns to bring the benefits of the Marrakesh Treaty to Kenya. From the joint international lobbying activities through World Blind Union and the regional lobbying activities through African Union of the Blind, KUB has been at the center of negotiations and lobbying for the adoption of the treaty. The union has continued lobbying activities for the domestication and implementation of the treaty in Kenya. In 2019, these efforts paid off after the Kenya Copyright Act was amended to be in line with the treaty. The union has also been aggressive in disseminating the treaty across the country, targeting the players in education sector such as school teachers, publishers, and county-level government officials. The dissemination is done through awareness-raising workshops where the Marrakesh Treaty is distributed in Braille format.
We are going to acquaint ourselves with a new device. It's called the dot min.
Other than lobbying, the union is piloting digital learning in public schools for the blind, which involves testing the effectiveness of digital learning as a tool for increasing access to textbooks for the blind students at much lower cost. The pilot involves setting up digital learning labs, equipping them with hardware and software required to facilitate access to textbooks for blind students and teachers.
In our school here, we have a computer digital lab. It is the courtesy of Kenya Union for the Blind. They brought for us 20 computers. They are talking computers in which they also went far to install for us soft copies of various subjects. I am so glad because the first subject that was installed is my subject, English literature. That is Blossoms of Savannah. It is one of the textbooks that is very voluminous. It is over 200 pages and this child has to read it. But when it was installed in that digital computer, the children can now go and just sit and then they listen.
In addition, the union is building the capacity of teachers and students to use the labs.
Digital learning is the most effective way to deliver education for learners and trainees with disabilities in school. Digital learning compared to traditional learning is more accessible, and affordable.
The union hopes that the government will adopt its model of digital learning and scale it up to benefit all school-going blind and partially sighted children and teachers.
Weaver, what are you weaving tonight? Weaver, today and tonight. Weave what and what else you weave? How do you keep weaving and chatting and weaving many a word? Weaver bird, you saw and so many a time. Right, and how very right you are. You built and you built to the top. Built and built a sea what? Weaver bird, what are you weaving?